Welcome to the podcast. Today I'm joined by Dr. Wendy Guess to explore healing through movement, sound, and ancestral wisdom. We discuss breaking generational patterns, taking responsibility for healing, and how constellations reveal hidden truths. We also touch on AI, core values, and the universal forces that connect us all. If you're ready to embrace change, this episode is for you. Thank you. It's so good to see you. I haven't seen you in a long time, so it's good to see you.
In a few years.
Yeah, it's been a couple of years. So I'm glad we were able to schedule this and get this on the schedule and being able to connect. And I've seen you go through. We've been in the same constellations and in different workshops together over many years. And I was very interested in what your origin story of how you got to this modality was. So can you tell me a little bit about how that happened?
The simple answer is when the student's ready, the teacher appears.
Yeah.
I think, and that's happened to me multiple times. As early as college, I was taking a movement for theater class, of all things. And the instructor brought in Tai Chi and brought in all the Eastern philosophy about the meridians and the Chi and the elements. And we used those elements because, they all have like a voice and a sound and a color and a movement style. And he brilliantly brought that in as an analyzing tool for developing a character for theater stage. And I was introduced to stuff like the Tao Te Ching, and I think that probably planted the seed for the journeys. And so everywhere I went, I would connect with the healing arts, if you will, and just quite by uncoincidence. And so when I first came to Miami, I joined a local yoga studio, and there just happened to be this workshop going on that was called Community Acupuncture. And of course, that had my little antennae going, that sounds really interesting. But then the incredible, I don't know how deep to go into this because the story of my getting there is a story in and of itself.
I'd love to hear it. Yeah.
Okay.
I'd love to hear it, right?
But I find frequently that when we're supposed to be somewhere, we tend to find resistance in getting there. And
Ain't
true
that
to
the
form.
Truth? Yeah, ain't that the truth?
I read about that, event. And, of course, part of me is going, oh, that sounds really cool. I should go. And the other part of me is going, no. And all week long, I'm like, yes, no. The morning of, I'm like, do I go? Do I not? I got in the car. I went. Even into the studio, I'm like, no, yes. No. I got to the counter, and it just so happened that I had this, I don't even remember why, but I had this credit for a free workshop. And so I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm supposed to go.
Okay.
I somehow, in a way, prepaid. And so I'm walk in finally. And this was 2 acupuncturists. And in the process, they kind of had a theme. And then so they needled everyone in the same way because it was supporting this particular theme of the day. And while we were, after we were all I guess, needled. Then we're all doing this sort of meditation. And they brought out this instrument called the Mona Lina,
Okay.
which, are you familiar with that at all?
No, no, I'm not.
I I had such a visceral reaction to it when they started playing, and it was like, I'm like, in a good way. I'm like, what is this instrument? Afterwards I went up. Like, I gotta play this. I gotta. What is this? So I have one.
Okay.
Maybe we can play it some today. And and that was like the next step. I needed to connect with that level of sound healing. And then they also did like private sessions. So I went to a private session, and she has the big tabletop version, which is like a full size chiropractor table size. So you lay on top, the strings are all underneath, and the practitioner is playing these strings. So literally, your whole entire body is vibrating. And and that I also had a huge reaction to. There was this sort of a energy that was sort of, I guess for lack of a better word, it was stuck, and it needed to be able to be released. And so it was that instrument that released it. And then afterwards, she said, you really need to go to a family constellation. And I'm like, a who and the what? Well, we're going to go on the star hunt? What? And so she's like, no, here, call Michelle, schedule one. I'm like, okay. This was in 2015.
Oh, wow.
And so, I'm like, okay. Well, then I think it was a very short while later, I can't even remember what the trip was that I was planning to go on. And for some reason, I got this we used to call it a spiritual pinch. It's kind of like a little boot and going, you need to go see Michelle. So I'm like, okay. So I took the coward's way out, and I emailed her. I'm like, oh, Michelle, so-and-so recommended you. And I see that on your calendar, because somehow I'd gotten hold of her timeline, your calendar says XYZ Wednesday night is supposed to be a constellation, and I'm leaving town the next day, and it just feels like I should, try to visit. And she writes back as only Michelle can. And, it's like, well, apparently you are supposed to have this constellation because the calendar was incorrect. It was actually supposed to be a meditation night.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay.
And so she graciously had me come over. They did a constellation that night. And, in the process of it, setting up all the family and everything, and finding out maybe there was, a miscarriage somewhere that was never talked about, or this or that. And then there was, the grandmother. And all of a sudden, it wasn't my grandmother anymore. It was my great-grandmother. And in that moment, I recognized that same dense energy in her that I had just
the one had
released.
You previously
the one I had just released.
in the guitar and the not the guitar, but the music table. Wow.
And so I'm like, there's something to this. And then, of course, I go on my trip. It's a great trip. Come back for more and more. And then I'm in constant okay, my academic brain is trying to take over to explain this, because my passion or my thing is take difficult concepts and make them understandable, for my students. And so, I'm like trying to put logic to this. I go, I'd get there and I'm like, okay, there's something woo-woo going on here. It doesn't make sense. How do you, but then you stand up in the field and it's like stuff happens. And Michelle, we had the joke, you cannot make this stuff up.
You can't make this stuff up. Yeah. And for the listeners, the person the Michelle that we're referencing, her name is Michelle Bleckner. And she's, for many years down here in South Florida has been doing family constellations, and it started in her apartment over many years. And a lot of us met through Michelle doing those workshops in her apartment, and really kind of people from all different walks of life, college professors, kind of like yourself, and people from all different walks of life have come through,
and all over the world.
Yeah, and from all over the world. Yeah, really, from all over the world. So how, now that it's probably a couple of years removed from that, how do you explain to somebody, and from an academic perspective, how do you explain to somebody the family constellation? I'm always curious about how that is.
Yeah, because now we're going on 10 years.
Yeah.
that I've been exposed to this and met this. And just on a side note, also went with Michelle and several other people over to Netherlands for training in the systemic or organizational side of things, because it was like I felt so deeply about that. I've brought it back. I've used some of the exercises and concepts with my students, little things that they can do either in an assignment or a class and stuff.
Okay.
And so it's been, I've gotten into it.
Yeah, really.
A bit. And so, with the students, I kind of just leave it at like, this is this work that I do that, to help businesses. It's just systemic. But in the last few years, I was just telling, Ian,
our producer,
that, or I was about to tell him, we had gone on a family history trip with my father and my siblings just, a few years before he passed. And for him, he had been working on his personal memoir or life story for probably the last 20 years of his life. And so there was something that sparked there, with this idea of the family history, understanding, more about our lineage. And and then traveling, like from there, I went to Romania and did, the traditional dances there that I had learned in college. And so it was like so amazing to actually go to the country and experience the dances that people were dancing with the people that were dancing them. And one thing that really struck me was that, in spite of all of the different kinds of trauma that this country and other countries have gone through, it's that aspect of dancing together that has, in a way, helped them survive.
Wow.
And helped them feel some identity when all the other outside forces were literally trying to remove their identity. And through, cultural, just wiping out their culture any way possible. But they kept it alive through their dancing. So back to your question. Sorry, I had a little journey to take before I could get to the question. This idea of understanding that, in every country there's been some kind of trauma. And so for now, I just say I work with healing generational trauma because people connect with that.
Yeah. And the zeitgeist really seems like it's ready for that conversation, because people are starting saying like, first it becomes pop culture, and then it goes into like into action. They say like, oh, well, I have generational trauma. I was like, well, now you can do something about it, right? Now that you've identified it, you can do something about it. And so I'm fascinated by that. that aspect of how it's starting into pop culture, and then you get almost like a like wielding it as a shield in your inner psychology talk, in your pop psychology talk, that people use it as an excuse. But then, the reality is that using it as the way to heal is the appropriate application of it. And
Yeah, because right now, kind of like the beginning of the Me Too movement, it was like finally people are able to speak out in
yeah,
some way about it. And then, unfortunately, in some areas, it kind of took on this sort of a badge of honor, like, yeah, me too. It's my
yeah,
badge, you know.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then, in a way, it lost, well, victim perpetratorhood, right?
yeah.
The victim energy became so strong that it did in some instances turn into a perpetrator energy. And so then we lose the healing.
Yeah, that's such a good point. That it's almost like a new crack happens, and there's like this big evolutionary force, right? Like that we know from Jan Jacob Stam. Like this evolutionary force comes in, like this movement, right? The Me Too movement. And it's like, yes, so many people have been hurt by the perpetrator energy, right? And that story's very vast and wide. But then what do you do with that information? Is like, do you use it to heal, or do you use it to craft your own axe to grind and then further perpetuate that cycle of pain,
Yes, 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 yes. And that just reminds me of this beautiful quote. And I wish I had written that down before. I've shared it somewhere, but a couple of years ago, I went to a genealogy conference called Roots Tech. One of the speakers shared a quote from this author, Edith Ego, I think it was Ego. And the book was called The Choice. There's more to it. Are you familiar with it at all?
No, no.
Oh my goodness. So she was a gymnast, ballerina, da 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 da, and then also a Jew during that time, and was taken to Auschwitz.
Oh, wow.
And she says, no, sorry, back to the dance analogy. Yeah,
It's a
you can
theme.
even see.
Yeah, it's a theme, right?
Uh, it has been a theme for my life, yeah.
Yeah.
Because she had that skill, she feels, like she mentioned in her book, that's probably what kept her alive, because she was basically commanded to perform for whoever, and because she could, they didn't kill her that day. But that was kind of like her lifeline, is that she could distract the guards, I guess you could say, or distract something because she had that skill. And, she survived. She went on to immigrate to the U.S. and she was a student of, oh gosh, he was another writer, and I just drew a blank. Was it Victor? Another writer, psychologist, a survivor of Auschwitz. And so, but she tells her story too, of not just surviving, but then figuring out how to thrive afterwards. She went on to become a psychotherapist, which was a fairly new field, I guess, at the time in the 50s and 60s.
Can I ask you a bit about the shift between family constellations and systemic constellations? Because I know you went to Slovenia, right? Is that correct?
I didn't go to that one. No.
Okay,
I
went to
I
the
did
other.
the systemic training with Jan Jakob.
Okay, so tell me a little bit. So people that don't know, Jan Jacob Stam is a systemic constellations facilitator, and systemic constellations are a little bit different than family constellations, but of the same family,
Same
right?
umbrella.
It's the
Yes.
same umbrella. At the end of the day, it's all constellations. But can you talk a little bit about what you learned during that process and some of the kind of highlights of that?
Sure. So a little bit of context. So when Michelle had gone to Slovenia and she came back and was like telling the group she had the whole mosaic idea, and then she mentioned, this work that Jan Jakob does, and that he was having a training. So I'm like, yes. Now, for me at the time, and still, I'm a associate teaching professor, and my topic is marketing. So I'm in the College of Business. So for me, it was like, oh, there's like constellation stuff for businesses. How cool is that? So I was very drawn to that because I could see, direct correlation for passing on tidbits to my students and impacting not just their lives, but everybody they ever touch, right? And so yeah, so he was trained also with Bert Hellinger, who was the originator of this amazing work. And he went, he worked with that. He was, I think, a biologist by trade. But then as he was doing the constellation work, he, kind of ended up developing this focus more on the business aspects. So all over the Netherlands, it's highly, quite widely practiced, and a lot of businesses come in and resolve things not unlike family stuff. Somebody's excluded, somebody's this, somebody's that. Managers are keep leaving. Why?
Yeah.
Some position keeps having turnover. What's going on with that? And it's all about uncovering that underneath layer, like what's there that's not being dealt with or acknowledged or spoken about or healed.
Yeah.
Because businesses are like an entity as well.
Hi, guys. I'm John, host of the Zulu One podcast. At the Zulu One podcast, we focus on having conversations about unresolved trauma and cultural and family systems. If you like what you're hearing, please consider becoming a monthly supporter. The link is below. Thank you. I love how you can take like concepts, right? It's like the old pattern, the blockage, the team, profit, you can take all these like super interesting, more esoteric than mom, right? It's like mom is, on all the wounds and all the stuff that comes with mom, right? And all the stories that come with mom, that you can really take like the community or the product and focus it that way and see it. I love that aspect of systemic work,
Yeah. And I think, there were so many exercises that came out of that training that I'm like, I just love this stuff. And so some that I've been able to actually apply to both students and groups that I've worked with is the one is recognizing what Jan Jakob calls leading principles, or sometimes guiding principles, which is, a lot of students go, oh, isn't that just your mission statement? No, it's a little bit more. And you might see some companies actually using that language. I'm not sure if it's the same, but it's this exercise that has you go through, a series of reflective questions to kind of go, why are you here?
Yeah.
Like get back to that. And I call it that original spark of like when that company idea first happened, or when maybe somebody first started working for that company, or like, what was that original spark that said, oh, this is it, I got to do this.
Yeah.
And then taking that spark and going, now, what was the thought process? What was like, your DNA of a company? Like, what is your purpose beyond just the products you sell?
Yeah.
And so from there, they kind of develop this 2 to 3 general keywords that kind of, you could say, are their theme or their principles that guide their decision making. One example of that I felt was really profound. There was this fitness company, and they had been primarily training fitness instructors, right? And then they had, diversifying, coming up with this app that they wanted to actually end up developing that would go straight to the customers. But, there was all this back and forth and back and forth. And so we did this exercise, and it came out that, oh, we are an education company. So it really helped them kind of circle back around and re-identify their purpose for existence, in a sense, and their service to humanity, is that we are education. And so the app is, maybe not in our alignment. And so they went back to focusing on education related.
Oh, that's powerful. Yeah, and those guiding principles, like such a powerful concept to say, like, we can find our guiding principles that are in our DNA that we haven't identified yet. That if we misplace those, if the CEO is not in alignment, or the COO, or the executive team, or the whole company is not aware of that, you can, it just resonates, right? It'd be like, we're an education company that just happens to do fitness, or, whatever that is. People are like, the light bulbs go boom, boom, boom. Everybody's like, light bulbs go off and everybody comes into alignment. Is that kind of the effect that you would see?
Yes. Yes. Because they're like, in a sense, it speaks to the heart. Oh, yeah, this is who we are. This is how we're serving humanity.
Yeah.
And then, even though that app for them was a cool idea and, had all the bells and whistles, it was like, it's not actually the way we were aligned. And so they were kept having trouble with it because they couldn't see how to get from, them to the customer, yada, yada, yada. And I'm like,
Yeah.
because that's not your, your direction. Right. And so, yeah, and you can do that as a professional, for yourself, as an individual, for yourself. I do this exercise with my students every semester, because here they are in the, whatever degrees they're in, because not all of them are marketing students. They're coming from other departments in the College of Business mostly. And they're all trying to, they're just getting started in their life story, right? And so I actually, just this semester, I'm really excited about this too, took it a step further. And so, with all the AI stuff going on, I'm like, you know what? Yeah. And this was right in the middle of a lecture, or talking about the assignment. And I'm like, oh, students, I just had a download and we're going to add this. So
okay,
I added some AI languaging in there. So, so first they do their Spark. They do this like set of 3 or 4 questions that guides them to those 2 to 3 keywords. So then I created an AI prompt that added that all in there, and with their keywords. And I said, okay, in this, do this, in this prompt. Now create a really, I don't remember the words I used, but create a really useful bio that students could use for their resume.
Wow.
Or whenever they're asked for a bio.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I did it on myself just to make sure, it was going to work right. And I was like, wow, that came out.
That's awesome.
It came out really good. So, here I'm, it's about a service that the students can then take with them. And they have now some powerful language to describe themselves in their, upcoming gazillion interviews that they're going to go through.
Yeah. Yeah. And finding, what your core guiding principles are, you can, when you find out your guiding principles, you can see if you're in alignment with those guiding principles, right? With the company that you're joining, right? It's like my guiding principles are peace and harmony and balance. it's like probably Raytheon or General Dynamics is not the right company for you to work for. You know what I mean?
You
So
might look at a nonprofit.
yeah, exactly. It's like, I'm going to go work for Halliburton, you know?
There's
You
not
know,
always
yeah.
real harmony in the nonprofits either.
Yeah, yeah, exactly,
Been there,
exactly.
done that. Yeah.
But you find that, you know, if depending on what your style is and what you're resonating with, you have the right fit with where you are in the company. It's such a powerful tool for a student, somebody that's just exploring who they are, and through this marketing class that they're learning how to market themselves, their true authentic self. You know,
Mm-hmm.
they're marketing the true authentic self, not the, you know, who they
Not
think
that
they
here's what
are,
you think
or
I'm supposed to be.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, or who mom and dad wanted me to be, or who all our my friends think that I should be, or, you know, whatever that looks like. That's a very powerful exercise, and I bet you found, you know, profound insights in your students
Oh,
with going
goodness.
through that.
Yeah, we did this, and this was a live class, which a lot of mine are online. So this was kind of that fun experiment. Um, Even just going through the first part of the AI, not the AI, because that happened after, but this spark, guiding them down to their keywords. Actually played some, meditative kind of music
Okay, okay.
while they're writing. Some of the stuff these kids, I'm just calling them kids, but these young adults, like some of the stuff that they were writing blew me away.
Mm,
I mean, it was like they actually
wow.
allowed themselves to play. And
Yeah.
what was so cool is, okay, so granted, the first couple of times, one or two hands, okay, I'll share. By the time we got to the keywords, the 2 to 3 keywords, they were on board. I think it went from like 2 or 3 to now there was like at least 10 that were willing to share their keywords. And I'm like, yes.
Oh, that's so
I
cool.
mean, I said this out loud. I'm like, our future's in good hands.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And so have it sounds like you've almost integrated facilitating into teaching in some way, right?
That is actually my teaching style of after years and years of teaching and being a dancer mover. I'm like, I don't want to sit and listen to me talk.
Yeah.
I want to have discussions because if anything, I learn more from my students.
Mm.
I mean, because they all come with such amazing, rich experiences, heartaches, tragedies, successes, so it's like, who am I to think I've got all access to the only knowledge they need?
Yeah, and marketing is such a evolving thing as well. It's like constantly evolving, and they're being marketed to, right? They're the current it's like the best feedback loop that you would have, because you get some of these textbooks and it's already 3 years old, right? And they're like 3 years old. 3 years old in current technology standards is like they're not even talking about there's this
It's like a
emerging
whole nother
technology.
decade.
Yeah, exactly, called social media, and you're like they're just like
Yeah.
they're decades behind, and not TikTok or the new next thing. And
Mhm. Yeah, and in fact, in that class, I dropped the textbook and I just
yeah,
wrote some stuff with AI.
yeah.
Well, AI consulted with me, but
Makes sense. It
and
makes sense.
that's a big thing in the college campuses too. Not to digress, but you know, just like with any new big tech, I remember I was going to college when the internet was first becoming a thing, right? And back then, all the professors, oh my gosh, students are going to cheat, and they're going to find all these workarounds. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
and so now, same thing. Oh, AI. Now the students are cheating and they're having AI write the answers for them. And, so it's like, okay, well, maybe you want to think about your teaching style, maybe needs to change. Maybe stop asking them to write these mundane research papers and find out different ways to figure out what they know.
No,
And
that's
so
powerful. Yeah.
I've boldly gone in and I'm like with every one of my classes, just about, I'm integrating in each class now, but I've added, to the assignments, suggested AI prompts to help guide them through the information.
Yeah, and it's not like it's going away, right? It's like it's here to stay. It's going to get more integrated into our lives. You might as well maximize the utilization of it. And if it can kill the soul crushing repetitive tasks that kill your creativity, right? Why not? Right? If somebody's like doing data analysis is like probably their best life isn't to go through and do data entry, right? If you can have an AI to do that and you can have them connect to their creativity and their marketing and their great ideas, problem solving, you can really maximize the people's potential.
Exactly. And so many of our students are, their first language is not English.
Yeah.
And, English is not the easiest language for all the different kinds of writing that we're asked to do. So when they can add AI, it makes our life a little easier too. But yeah, and not to be tacky, but it's kind of like the sex talk,
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
going to learn it from somewhere.
They're going to learn it
Where do
from
you want them
somewhere.
to learn
Yeah.
it from?
Yeah. And you might as well like give them the prompts that are going to maximize their creativity, especially in marketing, right? It's like, all right, you are now a, marketing producer. Now ask me 10 questions that are going to create the best commercial or the best pitch deck for this product. And we want to make it like earthy and like authentic and kind of hip.
Yeah.
And we want it to
Yeah.
be like a little with rock and roll music in the background doing stuff. And then it asks you all the questions and it'll create this awesome scene. And then you become an editor and a curator. And then your brain, like all the possibilities in the world, rather than sitting there in front of a blank screen and like, where do I
Yeah, I
start?
mean, exactly. The hardest place for people to get started is, oh, what do I do first? And so, you got this best buddy now that's AI going, hey, here's some ideas to get you started. Yes. And then, I go, okay, you're close, but I want more of this. Okay, that's closer, but more of this.
I bet it's revolutionized how you teach and how you can unlock potential in people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's kind of the things that you're seeing from students now? Are they more trauma informed? Are they seeking more of their authenticity? Are they still blocked? What are you seeing out there in the wild?
In the wild. I love it.
Right.
Um, all of that.
Okay.
And now I've got, two kind of really cool classes that actually invite. The one is international marketing. And so I'm going to say the first and most important piece of any of that is creating, a safe space, allowing it to be okay. Right. Which, and we talk in the constellation world about the holding space.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which from an educator perspective, that there's a lot of holding space that goes on in the classroom that we don't even acknowledge that we do, right? Because we're trying to, yeah.
Yeah, especially with like something like international marketing, right? That you'd be like, there's so many cultural nuances that maybe you haven't traveled or you haven't been exposed to it, and you've other people's cultures, and like selling, what do they call it? Like in Venezuela, they talk about this. Like you could sell a ketchup popsicle to a lady with white gloves. It's like that ability to it, right? Just the cultural nuances of what's happening with somebody, right? It's like depending on their cultures, like Kellogg's going into Brazil. My dad worked for Kellogg's, right? So how did they enter the Brazilian market? It's like eating cereal wasn't a thing that happened, right? And how do you market that? And
how do you make it a thing?
Yeah, how do you make it a thing? And it's just. And that's a terrible example because we found that, food has been a big issue, right? Yeah, exactly. So, but I would imagine that like just having, those nuanced conversations and creating a safe space, right? A location where they can play, like what you said, where they can play with these ideas and not feel like they're going to get shut down or, voted off the island because they said something wrong that they're learning about, right? Or whatever that is.
Right. That's Survivor Island. Right.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Well, and that's what's I'm really enjoying actually about this course because there are so many, like examples, like you mentioned, of US companies or other companies going into new countries and we can laugh about them now, but the epic fails, like the things that didn't translate too well, such as
Nova, the Chevy Nova. Yeah, yeah, it doesn't go. That's it. In Spanish is
and
doesn't go. Yeah.
yeah, and then there was one. What was it? Braniff Airlines, I think, way back when they first introduced leather seats as a luxury class.
Oh, okay.
And so the logo or the tagline was "Fly Leather." Well, when you start trying to, translate that to Spanish, it came out "Fly Naked" because
Yes,
leather.
yes, 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 yes. Yeah, it's like, oh, that doesn't, no, that culturally doesn't make sense. Yeah,
No, and then
yeah.
there's a whole bunch of examples of like taglines, especially that try to translate into other languages where, like, oh, finger licking good became eat your fingers off or something.
Oh,
So it's
wow.
like,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so I start off with the humorous side of the themes, and then we can kind of gently touch into even the nuances of the Spanish language across South America, which so many
yeah,
of them are from.
yeah.
And, they bring up examples. Now they're feeling empowered to talk about that because it's like, oh, yeah, there's this. And this word means, like girlfriend or nice girlfriend in this language. But the same word in this other country over here means like, not
Yeah.
nice girlfriend.
Yeah, yeah,
So you're kind of
yeah,
going, wow. And just that's the same word, but it has a completely different, opposite context
yeah. The
when you
cultural
go
nuances of each
from,
region
mhm.
and reach each, each dialect almost,
Yeah, yeah. And then like I'm sensitive towards the idea or and aware that there are still, how would you say, there countries are taught not to get along or not to like each other
Yeah.
around South America. And, I've got students coming from a whole bunch of countries. And so, this becomes almost that place to talk about some of these like delicate nuances to create awareness.
Mm.
It's like, oh, well, maybe instead of looking for all the differences that your parents told you have and why you shouldn't like that a country, maybe we could start seeing what's similar.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's brings me back to another dance story, if
Oh,
I
yeah, I'd
could.
love to hear it. Yeah.
So in college, I did traditional dance as well as ballroom dance. And in the traditional dance, we had the opportunity to represent American folk dances, which basically are borrowed European ones, but um, except square dance, we still borrowed that, but we put our own spin on it. Anyway, so we were taking American folk dances with our musicians and going to different stops in Europe where there was these huge dance festivals. And they were bringing dances in from multiple countries. We even had one, I think, from China. We had Turkey. We had, well, back in the day, it was Yugoslavia.
Okay.
So we had
Okay. Yeah.
Irish, German. Uh, I think we had one that came from somewhere in South America. We had a couple from Africa. So it was like, this wild group of people. And it was like, it was generally like 5 days long and there'd be parades and then there'd be performances and then they'd have activities for all the dancers to do, to socialize. And so, we're at this one little town in Germany called Schlitz.
Okay.
They claim they created the beer. I don't know. Um, but we're all doing this. Well, so we've done all our dances and parades and everything. And then at the social gathering for the performers, musicians do what they do, right? Oh, hey, you know this tune? And they start jamming together. So here's all these different country musicians starting to play songs that everybody knew. And then so us as dancers were like, oh, we know that. And we basically poured out into the street and we started forming up our little circles and squares. And I can still remember like it was yesterday. I'm in this group, we're out in the street. We literally shut down the street. The cars were like, what the heck? And I remember it was like a couples or partners, but you're in a square circle, something. So there was a guy from Yugoslavia, German couple, an Italian, a French, an Irish. It was the next week. There was the Turkish, but it was like, literally we had the whole world dancing.
Yeah.
And it just, it was like, just like it hit me. Oh, here's a little grandchild. It just like hit me so strongly. We don't know the same languages.
Yeah.
We don't practice the same religion. We don't have the same politics. Some people are like at that time, it was still the early 80s. So
yeah,
Yugoslavia was not a free place. Right?
Yeah.
And yet in that moment, because we all knew the same dance, we were like the best of friends doing something together. And it was like such a powerful, even however many years later, such a powerful moment in my life that it was like, wow, that dance, silly little dances supersede everything. Or they go beyond everything.
Yeah. The power of resonance.
And, because we could all hold hands and recognize that we were fellow humans who loved to move, who loved music, who loved joy, who wanted to be joyful. And that was so empowering.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a great place to land our plane. So, Wendy, if people want to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
So, I can be found on the handle at Dr. Wendy Guess. Like I'm on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram. So just search me there. I'm also on YouTube. All the handles same. Dr. Wendy Guess. Like guess who?
Perfect. Wendy, thank you so much. This has been awesome. It's great catching up with you.
Thanks, John.
All right. Bye. Thanks for tuning in to the Zulu One podcast. If you found value in today's podcast, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support means everything to us. And thank you for being part of this journey.